I offered a flower to the alien queen. She made me her consort. Stood at the viewing window of the transport ship, watching the massive space station grow larger. Apex Zenith was the biggest neutral station in the galaxy, and today would be his first time stepping foot on it. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his formal jacket. Inside the inner pocket, carefully protected in a small preservation case, was a single red rose. Nervous, Park appeared beside him, her reflection showing in the glass. She was the communications specialist for Earth's diplomatic team, and she had been to space stations before. Had not. A little, he admitted. I'm just a botanist. I don't know why they asked me to come to this reception. Smiled. Because you know about plants, and apparently nobody else in the galaxy does anymore. That makes you special. Wasn't sure about that. He had spent the last 5 years working in a greenhouse on Mars, growing Earth plants in alien soil. It was quiet work, safe work. Now he was going to meet alien queens and emperors, and he felt completely out of place. The transport docked an hour later. Captain, a stern man who led their security team, gave them final instructions. Stay together, be polite, don't touch anything unless invited. And remember, we represent all of Earth tonight. The reception hall was enormous. The ceiling stretched so high that couldn't see the top. Beings from dozens of different species filled the space. Some had scales, some had fur, and some looked like they were made of living crystal. The air hummed with conversations in languages that translator could barely keep up with. The contingent is over there, whispered, pointing to the far side of the hall. A group of tall, elegant beings stood together. Their skin shimmered like polished metal, and their eyes glowed with a soft blue light. In the center stood a woman who could only be the queen. Queen Aura was taller than the others, wearing robes that seemed to be made of liquid silver. Her face was beautiful but cold, like a statue carved from ice. She looked bored as various ambassadors approached her, each trying to gain her attention. She's intimidating, said. She's terrifying, corrected. The Empire controls 400 star systems. She's been alive for 800 years, and she's never ever smiled. At least, that's what the reports say. Watched the Queen for a while. Despite her power and beauty, something about her made him feel sad. She looked lonely, standing there surrounded by people who wanted something from her. The evening continued. The human delegation stayed near the walls, mostly ignored by the other species. Humans were new to the Galactic Council, and most aliens saw them as primitive. Didn't mind. He preferred watching to talking anyway. Then something happened that changed everything. An ambassador, a large reptilian creature with orange scales, approached their group. The had opposed Earth's admission to the Council. Everyone knew they saw humans as inferior. Ah, the Earth delegation, the said, his voice dripping with false politeness. How charming to see you here. He held a glass filled with a bubbling green liquid. Captain stepped forward. Ambassador, we hope you're enjoying the reception. Oh, I am, the replied. Then, as if by accident, he stumbled. The green liquid splashed directly onto his jacket. The chemical smell was overwhelming and felt the fabric begin to smoke. Oops, the said, not sounding sorry at all. How clumsy of me. Several aliens nearby laughed. Felt his face grow hot with embarrassment and anger. Captain moved forward but held up his hand. Fighting would only make humans look worse. It's okay, said calmly. He removed his jacket, now ruined. Underneath he wore a simple white shirt. Accidents happen. The sneered and walked away. Looked furious, but just took a deep breath. His mother had always told him that responding to cruelty with more cruelty solved nothing. He reached into his jacket pocket before discarding it completely. The preservation case was still intact, protected by its shielding. The rose inside was perfect, its red petals still fresh. At least this survived, he said quietly. At that moment, Queen Aura walked past. She was leaving the reception early, surrounded by her guards. The crowd parted for her like water around a stone. She moved with grace and authority, looking straight ahead, acknowledging no one. Something made step forward. Maybe it was the humiliation he had just suffered. Maybe it was the sadness he had seen in her eyes earlier. Or maybe it was simply because he wanted to do something kind in a room full of cruelty. "Your Majesty," he called out. The entire hall went silent. Every eye turned to look at him, grabbed his arm, but he gently pulled away. He walked toward the Queen, holding the preservation case. The guards moved to intercept him, but the Queen raised one hand. They stopped immediately. She turned to face, her glowing blue eyes fixed on him. "You dare to approach me without invitation." Her voice was like cold wind over ice. His heart pounded, but he didn't back down. He opened the preservation case, revealing the rose. "On Earth, when we want to show respect and peaceful intentions, we offer flowers. I grew this myself. I wanted you to have it." The Queen stared at the rose. For a long moment she said nothing. The silence in the hall was absolute. Then she reached out and took the rose, her fingers carefully avoiding the thorns. "A flower," she said softly. "I have never seen one before. Our world has no such things." "They're fragile," explained. "They need care and patience, but they're beautiful, and they remind us that beauty is worth protecting." The Queen lifted the rose to her face, wondered if she could smell anything. They were so different from humans. Then something impossible happened. The corner of Queen Aura's mouth moved upward, just slightly, just for a moment, but it was there. She smiled. The guards looked shocked. The other aliens whispered urgently to each other. Evan's translator seemed confused by the sudden flood of conversations. "What is your name?" the Queen asked. "Your Majesty, I'm a botanist with the Earth delegation." She repeated, "I will remember this name." She looked at the rose again, then at him. "And I will remember this gift." She turned and left, still holding the rose carefully. Her guards followed, looking confused and concerned. Stood there not quite believing what had just happened, rushed to his side. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" she asked. "I gave her a flower," said simply. "You made the eternal ice smile," replied. "Nobody has ever done that, nobody." Captain appeared, looking both impressed and worried. "Pack your things tonight. Something tells me this isn't over." Looked down at his hands. They had stopped trembling. For the first time since arriving at the station, he felt like he had done something right. He didn't know that his simple gesture had just changed the entire galaxy. "I offered a flower to the alien queen. She made me her consort." Woke to urgent knocking on his door. He stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and opened it to find Captain standing in the corridor. Behind him were two tall guards, their metallic skin gleaming in the harsh station lights. "Get dressed," said quietly. "Formal clothes quickly." "What's happening?" asked, suddenly very awake. "The Queen has sent for you." 20 minutes later, found himself in a transport ship heading toward the royal vessel. It was massive, more like a floating city than a ship. Had insisted on coming with him and had allowed it. They sat in silence as the transport approached the docking bay. "This could be good or very bad," said. "They don't usually invite anyone to their ships." "Why would she want to see me?" asked. "That's what we're about to find out." The royal vessel was beyond anything had imagined. The corridors were made of something that looked like crystal and metal combined. Lights pulsed through the walls like heartbeats. The guards led them deeper into the ship until they reached massive doors that opened without sound. The throne room took breath away. The ceiling showed space itself, stars and nebulas moving slowly above them. And there, in a stasis field at the center of the room, was his rose. It floated in perfect preservation, lit by soft light. "Beautiful, is it not?" Queen Aura's voice came from behind them. Turned and bowed. The Queen stood on a raised platform, still wearing her silver robes. This time she was alone. No guards, no advisors, just her. "Your Majesty," he said. "Come closer." She descended from the platform. "Your companion may wait there." Gave an encouraging nod before stepping back. Approached the Queen, feeling small despite being nearly her height. "Tell me about this flower," Aura commanded. "Tell me everything." So did. He explained how roses evolved on Earth, how humans had cultivated them for thousands of years. He described the smell, the feel of petals, the way different colors meant different things in human culture. He talked about his greenhouse on Mars, how he had worked for years to create a rose that could survive in artificial gravity. The Queen listened without interrupting. Her glowing eyes never left his face. "And flowers are common on Earth?" she asked when he finished. "Very common. We have millions of species. Trees that bloom in spring, fields of flowers in summer, gardens in almost every home. Nature is part of our lives." "Nature," she repeated as if testing the word. "We abandoned such things ago. Organic life is inefficient. It requires care, resources, time. We replaced it with synthetic systems." "But what did you gain?" asked, then immediately worried he had been too bold. The Queen didn't seem offended. Instead, she looked sad. "Efficiency, power, control. We built an empire that spans 400 star systems. We live for centuries. We have eliminated weakness." "And emotion?" asked gently. She turned away. "That too, emotion is weakness. It clouds judgment. It makes rulers vulnerable." She paused. "But last night when you gave me this flower, I felt something I had not felt in 800 years. I felt curious, I felt pleased." "That's wonderful," said. "It is terrifying," the Queen corrected. "I am the eternal ice. I am the ruler who never wavers, never doubts, never feels. And now I find myself thinking about a flower, about the man who grew it, about a world that still has gardens." She turned back to face him and saw something in her eyes that surprised him. Loneliness, deep and old and painful. "I want to understand," she said. "I want to learn about your world, your culture, your connection to these growing things. And so I have decided to make you my cultural consort." Stared at her. "You're what?" "A cultural consort. It is an ancient position that has not been filled in 3,000 years. You will stay here in the royal court. You will teach me about humanity. In return, you will have my protection and the status of royalty." I can't," stammered. "I'm just a botanist. I'm not qualified to represent Earth's culture. I don't know about politics or diplomacy." "That is precisely why I chose you," Aura said. "Everyone else who approaches me wants something. Power, trade, agreements, alliances. You asked for nothing. You simply offered kindness. That is what I want to understand." Behind him, heard sharp intake of breath. He turned to look at her. She looked shocked but also calculating, probably thinking about the political implications. "Can I speak with my colleagues?" asked. "You may, but understand this. My offer is an honor beyond measure. To refuse would be seen as an insult to the Empire. It would damage your Earth standing in the Galactic Council." It was a trap, realized. A gilded trap, but a trap nonetheless. He couldn't refuse without hurting humanity's position in the galaxy. The Queen seemed to read his thoughts. "I do not wish to force you, but I need this. I need to understand what my people have lost, and I believe you can show me." Looked at the rose floating in its stasis field. He had grown it hopping to bring a piece of Earth to the stars. He had never imagined it would lead to this. "May I think about it?" he asked. "You have until tomorrow," the Queen said. "Now go, discuss this with your people." The trip back to the human embassy was tense. As soon as they were in a secure room, started packing. "This is insane," she said. "Do you know what a consort is in culture?" She said it's a cultural position, replied. "It's also a romantic one," explained. "Or it was, historically. The Queen is essentially declaring you her partner. The entire galaxy is going to think you two are together." Felt his face grow hot, but she just wants to learn about Earth. Maybe, said. Or maybe she wants more than that and doesn't know how to say it. The don't do emotions well, remember. Captain, who had been silent until now, spoke up. The political angle is important. If you accept, Earth gains enormous influence. The Queen's favor would open doors that might take us decades to open otherwise. But what about what I want? Asked. What do you want? Asked gently. Thought about the Queen's lonely eyes. He thought about a civilization that had forgotten how to feel. He thought about gardens and flowers and the simple joy of watching something grow. I want to help, he said quietly. She looked so sad. If I can teach her about what makes life worth living, shouldn't I try? Smiled, that's very you. But are you ready for your life to completely change? I don't think I have a choice, said. If I refuse, I hurt Earth. If I accept, I help Earth. The decision is already made. That night couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the Queen's words. She had ruled for 800 years, powerful and cold and alone, and somehow a single flower had reached her. The next morning, he returned to the royal vessel. The Queen received him in the same throne room. I accept, said. I'll be your cultural consort. Aura's expression didn't change, but thought he saw relief in her eyes. Then it is done, she said. From this moment you are under my protection. You will live here in the royal quarters. You will teach me and I will learn. And perhaps, she paused, looking at the rose, perhaps we will both discover something new. As stood in that crystal throne room, watching stars move overhead, he wondered what he had just agreed to. He had come to the stars to study plants. Instead, he was about to teach an alien queen how to feel again. The galaxy, he suspected, was about to become much more complicated. I offered a flower to the alien queen. She made me her consort. 2 weeks had passed since moved into the royal quarters. His new rooms were larger than his entire apartment back on Mars. Everything was made of the same crystal metal material, beautiful but cold. He missed plants. He missed dirt under his fingernails. He missed home. Every day, Queen Aura summoned him. They would sit in her private study, and he would tell her stories about Earth. He described seasons changing, rain falling on leaves, the smell of flowers after a storm. She listened with an intensity that was almost frightening, asking questions that sometimes lasted hours. Why do humans give flowers when someone dies? She asked one day. To show we care, explained. To say that even in sadness there's beauty, that life continues. We do not mourn our dead, Aura said. Death is efficient. When a dies, their knowledge is uploaded, their body recycled. There is no emotion attached. That sounds lonely, said without thinking. The Queen looked at him sharply, then her expression softened. It is. I am beginning to understand that now. On the 15th day, made a proposal. They were in the throne room, where his rose still floated in its stasis field. Aura had spent an hour simply staring at it. Your Majesty, he said, one flower isn't enough. You need to see how things grow. Let me create a garden here. A garden in the palace. Yes, a real garden with soil and water and living plants. I can request seeds from Earth. We can terraform a section of the palace. You could see what it means to care for something living. Aura stood silent for so long that worried he had overstepped. Then she smiled. It was still small, still uncertain, but it was definitely a smile. Yes, she said, make me a garden. The next month was chaos. Contacted, who arranged for supplies from Earth. Soil, seeds, irrigation systems, grow lights that mimicked Earth's sun. The engineers were confused but followed orders. A large chamber next to the throne room was cleared and prepared. Captain visited once, bringing additional supplies. The whole galaxy is watching, he told. Some species think this is wonderful. Others think you're corrupting them. Be careful. I'm just planting flowers, said. You're changing an empire, replied. That's never safe. The Queen came every day to watch the progress. At first, she stood at a distance, observing. But gradually she came closer, showed her how to hold a seed, how to press it into soil, how to water without drowning the delicate roots. "It's so small," she said, holding a seed in her palm. "How can something so small become a tree?" "Time and care," said. "You have to believe in it." "I have not believed in anything for a very long time," Aura admitted. They worked side by side and slowly saw her change. Her movements became less rigid. Her voice lost some of its cold edge. Sometimes she would laugh when he told her about funny things that had happened in his greenhouse. The sound startled her guards every time. The garden began to grow. Small shoots pushed through the soil. Green appeared where there had only been crystal and metal. The chamber filled with the smell of earth and growing things. Others started to visit. At first they were confused, then curious. Some asked questions. Others just stood and stared at the plants with expressions that might have been wonder. One evening was working late, transplanting seedlings. He didn't hear the queen enter. "You love this," she said, making him jump. "I do," he admitted. "There's something peaceful about it. Everything else in life is complicated, but plants are simple. Give them what they need and they grow." "Is that why you do this, for peace?" "Thought about it, partly, but also because it connects me to Earth. No matter how far I travel, when I'm working with plants, I'm home." Aura knelt beside him, her silver robes trailing in the dirt. She didn't seem to care. "Tell me about your home, your real home before the stars." So told her about Seoul, where he grew up. The parks in spring when cherry blossoms bloomed. The markets selling flowers. His grandmother's small garden where she grew vegetables and herbs. How she taught him to garden when he was young, telling him that anything grown with care and love would flourish. "She sounds wise," the queen said softly. "She was. She died 5 years ago. I think about her every time I plant something." "You honor her with this garden," Aura said. "That is beautiful." They sat together in comfortable silence. Then the queen spoke again, her voice uncertain. "May I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Why aren't you afraid of me? Everyone else is. Even my own people fear me." Looked at her. In the soft light of the grow lamps, with dirt on her hands and her hair slightly mussed, she didn't look like the eternal ice. She looked like someone who had been alone for too long. "I was afraid at first," he admitted. "But then I realized something. You're not cold because you want to be. You're cold because you've been taught that feeling is weakness. But it's not. Feeling is what makes us alive." "My people eliminated emotion to become strong," she said. "But are you happy?" asked gently. Aura looked at her hands, covered in earth soil. "No, I have never been happy, not until," she trailed off. "Until what?" "Until you gave me a flower and showed me that there was more to existence than ruling and conquering and enduring." She looked up at him, and her eyes were bright. "You gave me hope that I could feel again." 3 days later, the first flower bloomed. It was a small rose, white with pink edges. Found it in the morning and immediately went to find the queen. She was in a council meeting, but she dismissed everyone when she heard his news. They rushed to the garden together, and she stopped in wonder when she saw the bloom. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Touch it," encouraged, gently. She reached out and brushed her fingers against the petals. Then she did something that shocked both of them. She started crying. Clear, silver tears ran down her face. She touched them in confusion. "What is this?" she asked. "You're crying," said softly. "It's okay. It means you're feeling something strong." "I don't understand. I'm not sad. I'm not in pain." "Sometimes we cry when we're happy," explained, "or when something is so beautiful it overwhelms us." Aura looked at the flower, then at him, then back at the flower. 800 years, she said. 800 years, and I had forgotten this. How could my people do this? How could we cut this out of ourselves?" "I don't know," said, "but you're finding it again. That's what matters." She turned to him, still crying. Help me, please. I don't want to be the eternal ice anymore. I want to feel. I want to live, not just exist. Took her hand. It was cool and smooth, so different from human skin, but it trembled just like anyone's would. We'll do it together, he promised. That night, under the artificial lights that mimicked stars, they stood in the garden surrounded by growing things. The queen asked to teach her about cherry blossoms, about the tradition of sitting beneath them in spring. Next month, he told her, the cherry tree I planted will bloom. We'll sit beneath it together. I would like that, she said. Then very quietly, I would like that very much. Neither of them knew that enemies were watching, enemies who saw the queen's transformation as weakness. Neither of them knew that the real test was coming. But in that moment, in a garden grown in the heart of an alien empire, a lonely queen learned to cry, and a simple botanist learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is teach someone how to feel. I offered a flower to the alien queen. She made me her consort. The cherry blossom tree bloomed on a Tuesday morning. Woke early to check on it and found the branches covered in delicate pink flowers. He immediately sent word to the queen. Aura arrived within minutes, still wearing her sleeping robes. Her hair was loose, falling around her shoulders. Had never seen her look so unguarded. It's beautiful, she breathed, reaching up to touch a branch. In Japan, there's a tradition called hanami, explained. People gather under cherry blossom trees to appreciate their beauty. The blossoms only last a short time, which makes them more precious. Nothing in culture is temporary, the queen said. We build things to last forever, but these will fall. In about a week, but they'll bloom again next year. Aura looked sad. I like that, the cycle of it, death and rebirth. We lost that too. They had planned a ceremony for that evening. The queen wanted to share the garden with her court to show them what she had learned. Was nervous. Many still disapproved of the changes in their queen. Arrived that afternoon with Captain. They brought formal clothes for and news from Earth. The Empire has been very quiet lately, said. Too quiet. Our intelligence suggests they're planning something. They hate that Earth has the Queen's favor, added. Several other species have joined them. They call themselves the Traditional Coalition. What do they want? Asked. They want things to go back to how they were. Cold, efficient, predictable. You and this garden represent change, and they fear change. Aura entered the room, now dressed in ceremonial robes. She looked regal and beautiful, but saw worry in her eyes. I know about the coalition, she said. My intelligence network is extensive. They plot in the shadows, but I see them. Should we cancel the ceremony? Asked. No, the queen said firmly. I will not hide. I will not pretend to be something I'm not anymore. If they want the eternal ice, they will be disappointed. She is gone. The ceremony began at sunset. Nobles filled the garden, their metallic forms gleaming in the soft light. Many looked uncomfortable, unused to organic surroundings. Some looked curious. A few looked openly hostile. The queen stood beneath the cherry tree beside her. She gave a speech about change and growth, about how her people had lost something precious in their pursuit of perfection. Her voice was strong, but could see her hands trembling slightly. We became powerful, she said, but we forgot how to live. This human has reminded me that strength without feeling is just existence. I want more than that. I want us all to have more than that. Some of the nobles nodded. Others whispered among themselves. Then someone asked to speak. It was one of the queen's oldest advisors, a male named. Your Majesty, he said, his voice careful, we respect your wisdom, but emotion is dangerous. It led our ancestors to war and destruction. We eliminated it to survive. No, the queen said, you eliminated it to avoid pain. But without pain there is no joy. Without sadness there is no happiness. Without fear there is no courage. My ancestors were cowards who chose emptiness over feeling. The crowd gasped. No one had ever heard the queen speak this way. His expression hardened. Then perhaps your majesty is no longer fit to rule. The garden went silent. It was treason to question the queen's fitness. Aura stepped forward, her eyes blazing. Are you challenging me? Before he could answer, alarms blared. The palace shields activated. Captain immediately moved to protect while guards surrounded the queen. We're under attack, a guard reported. Multiple breaches, assassins in the palace. The ceremony dissolved into chaos. Nobles ran for safety. Guards drew weapons that looked like crystallized lightning. Get the human to safety, Aura commanded. I'm not leaving you, said. You must, they're here for you. If you die, the coalition wins. 3 figures burst into the garden. They wore armor that masked their species, but their weapons were clearly military grade. They moved fast, faster than could track. Captain fired his weapon, hitting one. The other 2 kept coming, heading straight for. He ran, darting between trees and plants. One assassin gained on him, tripped over a root and fell. The assassin raised its weapon, then a silver blur knocked it aside. Aura stood over, fury on her face. She was unarmed, but her hands glowed with power had never seen before. You dare, she hissed. You dare attack him in my home. The assassin lunged at her. She caught it by the throat and lifted it off the ground with one hand. The glow around her intensified and the assassin screamed. When she released it, it fell dead. The 3rd assassin tried to run. Guards caught it. The queen turned too, and he saw something terrifying in her eyes. Raw, primal rage. Not cold calculation, but burning emotion. Are you hurt? She demanded. No, I'm fine, but your majesty, you're... I'm what? She looked at her hands, still glowing with power. I'm angry, I'm terrified. I nearly lost you, and I realize now that I cannot bear that. She helped him to his feet, then turned to address the shocked crowd. Many nobles had returned, drawn by the sounds of battle. This is what the coalition brings, she announced. They attacked during a ceremony of peace. They tried to kill an innocent man to make a political point. If this is tradition, then tradition is worthless. She walked to the cherry blossom tree. Several blossoms had fallen during the fight. She picked one up. These blossoms are fragile, she said. They can be destroyed easily, but they are beautiful and they are real. I choose reality over the cold lie we have been living. She looked directly at who stood pale and shaken. If you were part of this, I will know, and if you were not, then decide now. Do you serve the eternal ice or do you serve me? I serve you, my queen, said, and thought he heard sincerity in his voice. I was wrong to question your wisdom. The crisis passed. The assassins were taken away. The coalition's plan had failed. But as the garden cleared, found the queen sitting beneath the cherry tree, her face in her hands. He sat beside her. Are you okay? I killed someone, she said. I have ordered deaths before, but I never felt anything. This time I felt everything. The anger, the fear, the satisfaction when it died. Is this what emotion is? It's overwhelming. Sometimes, said, but there are other emotions too. Relief that we're safe. Joy that the garden survived. Hope for what comes next. She looked at him and her expression was vulnerable. I was so afraid I would lose you. When I saw that assassin about to strike, something inside me broke. Or maybe it finally healed. I don't know anymore. You protected me, said gently. That's what matters. No, she said. What matters is why I protected you. It wasn't duty. It wasn't politics. It was because the thought of you dying made me feel like I was dying too. His heart beat faster. Your Majesty, what are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere between the first flower and the last cherry blossom, I stopped seeing you as a teacher. You showed me how to feel, and the first thing I truly felt was, she paused, struggling for words, was caring for you, deeply, more than I should. She stood abruptly. I should not have said that. I've confused everything. You're my consort, my teacher, not. Not what? Asked standing too. Not someone I should love, she finished quietly. The word hung in the air between them. Love. Realized he had been feeling it too, growing slowly like one of his plants, caring for her, worrying about her, wanting to see her smile. Maybe you should, he said. She looked at him in surprise. Maybe you should love, he continued. Isn't that what all of this has been about? Learning to feel again, and love is the strongest feeling of all. But you're human. This is impossible. You made a garden in a palace of crystal, said. You made the eternal ice cry. We've already done several impossible things. Aura smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed her face from beautiful to radiant. Then perhaps, she said, we can do one more. I offered a flower to the alien queen. She made me her consort. 6 months passed. The assassination attempt had exposed the coalition, and they had been dealt with according to law. More importantly, it had changed everything between and the queen. They were no longer just teacher and student. They were partners. The galaxy gossiped endlessly about them, but neither cared anymore. The garden had expanded to 5 chambers, each representing a different Earth ecosystem, came from across the empire to see it. But something even more remarkable was happening. Others were starting to show emotions, small at first, a guard who smiled, a noble who cried at beauty, a scientist who laughed at a joke. The changes in their queen were inspiring changes in her people. Today was special. The queen was going to make an announcement to the entire empire, stood with her in the throne room, dressed in formal clothes that blended human and styles, and Captain stood nearby, representing Earth. Are you ready? Aura asked him quietly. No, admitted, but I'll do it anyway. She smiled and took his hand. Her skin was still cool, but somehow it felt right in his. They had held hands often in the past months, walking through the gardens, talking late into the night. Each touch had become more natural. The communication system activated, connecting them to millions of across hundreds of worlds. The queen's face would appear on screens everywhere. My people, she began, her voice carrying the authority of 800 years of rule. I speak to you today not as the eternal ice, but as Aura, simply Aura. She paused, letting that sink in. Using her name instead of her title was revolutionary. For generations, we have believed that emotion is weakness. We eliminated it from our culture, our education, our very biology where we could. We told ourselves this made us strong. But I have learned something that changes everything. She looked at, and her eyes were warm. We were wrong. Emotion is not weakness. It is the essence of life. Without it, we are simply machines that happen to be made of flesh and metal. We exist, but we do not live. The throne room was silent, except for her voice. A human came to me 6 months ago and offered me a flower. It was a small gesture, meaningless to most. But it was the first genuine kindness I had received in centuries. That flower taught me more than 800 years of ruling ever did. She squeezed his hand. With his help I have rediscovered what we lost. Joy, sadness, wonder, love. Yes, love. I stand before you today and admit that I, your queen, have fallen in love with a human, and I am not ashamed. Gasps echoed through the throne room. This was beyond anything anyone had expected. I know this troubles some of you. You worry that emotion will weaken our empire. But I tell you now, we are stronger than we have ever been. Our soldiers fight not just out of programming, but out of love for their home. Our scientists work not just for efficiency, but out of curiosity and joy in discovery. Our people are waking up, remembering how to feel, and it makes us better. She released his hand and stepped forward, addressing the entire empire. Today, I make 2 announcements. First, I am establishing the Garden Initiative. We will share Earth's botanical knowledge with any species that wishes to learn. We will teach them what humans taught me, that caring for living things connects us to life itself. Second, and here her voice grew softer, more vulnerable, I am formally declaring not just my cultural consort but my chosen partner. In 1 month, we will have a union ceremony. I invite all species to witness, to see that love can bridge any divide." The communication ended. For a moment, nobody moved. Then slowly, starting with the younger, applause began. It grew louder, spreading through the throne room. Not everyone clapped, some looked shocked, others disapproving, but more joined in than had dared hope. Later that evening, walked through the main garden with, "You're really going to marry an alien queen," she said, shaking her head in wonder. "When you came to that reception 6 months ago, did you ever imagine this?" "Never," laughed. "I just wanted to give her a flower." "You gave her much more than that. You gave her back her soul." "She did the same for me," said thoughtfully. "I was just existing too in my own way, working in my greenhouse, avoiding people, playing it safe. She taught me to be brave." "Earth is proud of you," said. "Do you know how many species have contacted us asking about the Garden Initiative? You've made humanity important not because of weapons or technology, but because we remembered something simple: how to live." The next month was overwhelming. Species from across the galaxy sent representatives. Some came out of genuine interest, others out of curiosity, and a few out of hope. The sent no one, still bitter about their failed coalition. The garden was expanded again for the ceremony. Worked with engineers to create something beautiful, a space where crystal and flowers grew together, where technology and nature merged. The night before the ceremony found the queen in the original garden, standing beneath the cherry blossom tree. The blossoms had fallen and grown back twice since that first bloom. "Having doubts?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted. "I have led armies, conquered worlds, made decisions that affected billions. But this, committing to one person, this is the most frightening thing I've ever done." "We can stop if you want," offered, though the thought pained him. "No," she said firmly. She turned to face him, taking both his hands. "I spent 800 years alone because I was afraid to feel. I won't make that mistake again. You taught me that fear is only bad if it stops you from living." "Your grandmother would be proud of you," she added. "You honored her by making things grow, and you honored me by helping me grow too." The ceremony the next day was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It blended crystal traditions with human customs, wore a hanbok, traditional Korean clothes in white and blue. Aura wore robes that shimmered like starlight, with flowers woven into her hair, real flowers that had grown for her. They stood together under an arch made of living vines and crystalline structures. Representatives from 50 species watched. Captain stood as witness. A elder named, who had become a friend, stood for the queen. The vows were simple. Aura spoke in her language, then in human language. "I vow to feel, to live, to love. I vow to remember the lessons of flowers, that beauty is worth protecting, that growth takes time, that temporary things are precious. I vow to share my life with you in all its joy and pain." Vows were equally simple. "I vow to show you wonder every day. I vow to grow gardens with you across the stars. I vow to be brave enough to feel alongside you. And I vow that wherever we are, as long as we're together, we're home." When they sealed the union with joined hands, something remarkable happened. The flowers in the garden bloomed all at once, as if celebrating with them. It was coincidence, probably just the timing of their growth cycles, but it felt like magic. The reception lasted hours. Species that had been enemies for centuries stood together in the garden, united by curiosity about these strange plants and this stranger love story. Near the end of the night, found himself alone for a moment, looking at the stars through the clear dome above the garden. He thought about his grandmother, about his greenhouse on Mars, about the long journey that had led him here. Aura appeared beside him. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I came to the stars to study alien plants," he said. "Instead, I helped an alien queen remember how to be alive. Life is strange." Life is wonderful, she corrected. She leaned against him and they stood together looking at the stars. Do you know what the best part is? She asked. What? We have years to keep discovering things. Decades. Perhaps I can teach you meditation. You can teach me about more Earth traditions. We can plant gardens on new worlds. We can live truly live together. I'd like that, Sid. A year later, the Garden Initiative had spread to 40 star systems. Species that had forgotten about organic life were relearning. Emotion was slowly returning to corners of the galaxy that had been cold for too long. And in the royal palace, in a garden that grew larger every day, a human botanist and an alien queen could often be found working side by side, their hands in the soil, planting seeds that would bloom into tomorrow. It had all started with a single flower, but it became something much bigger. It became hope. It became love. It became proof that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is offer kindness to someone who has forgotten what kindness feels like. And sometimes, just sometimes, that simple gesture can change the entire galaxy.